Hey, I'm Baz, filmmaker, dad, and the guy behind 20 Minute Gamer. If you're anything like me, you don't have hours and hours to sink into every game, and that's why I put games to the test and find out whether they can grab your attention or not just in that first 20 minutes. Because let's face it, some of us don't have the luxury of 6-hour sessions to see if a game finally gets good. We need to know upfront whether it's worth our precious time, and that's where I come in. Today, I'm playing Tomb Raider Legend. I originally played this back in the day on Xbox 360. In fact, it was one of the first games I ever owned for the console. I have really fond memories of playing through the whole thing and being wowed by how different it felt to the original Tomb Raider games I grew up with. I was already a fan of the series, having played Tomb Raider 1, 2 and 3 on the original PlayStation, but then I dropped off the series for a while. When Legend came out, it felt a little bit like a soft reboot, familiar but fresh, and I remember being particularly impressed with the graphics. Gone were the pixelated, jagged triangles of the original Lara, and in came something sleeker, smoother, and far more cinematic. So today I wanted to find out whether that impression still holds up. Does it stand the test of time, or has it aged into a relic? Tomb Raider Legend was released in 2006 and developed by Crystal Dynamics after core design stepped away from the series. It was a bit of a soft reboot for the franchise, intended to breathe new life into Lara Croft following some of the less well-received entries. With a new focus on accessibility, updated controls, and a more modern action-adventure style, Legend aimed to make Lara relevant again. This game launched on several platforms, including Xbox, PS2, PC, and eventually the Xbox 360, with each version looking and feeling slightly different. Crystal Dynamics brought in Toby Gard, Lara's original creator, to help shape the new direction. The result is a streamlined adventure that balances tomb exploration, combat, and cinematic storytelling with plenty of nods to old-school fans. Story. If you're familiar with my channel, you'll know I don't spend much time watching cutscenes. I really prefer to maximise gameplay in my first 20 minutes. Luckily, Legend does a solid job of drip-feeding the story through in-game dialogue.
And an old friend working in La Paz has tipped me off about a rather promising movement.
What sort of artifacts?
An ornate stone dais, among other things.
Most of the exposition happens as you play, thanks to Lara chatting with her team over a headset. It's quick, natural, and it lets you stay immersed without pausing for lengthy cutscenes. From the get-go, it's clear you're searching for the remnants of an ancient temple or a tomb, possibly tied to an artifact with some hidden power. As you start exploring, you quickly realise you're not the only one after it. A few run-ins with gun-toting enemies suggest that there's a lot more at stake. So one moment really stood out to me. Lara comes across two goons, calmly turns towards the camera with a cheeky grin, like she knows we're watching, and then immediately guns them down.
Around, screaming and yelling, whatever.
When I first played this years ago, I thought it was cool, maybe even funny, but this time around it feels a little bit sinister, almost like Lara's become the kind of person who smirks before killing someone. That, plus the fact that she shoots endangered animals on sight, gives me a slight sense that our beloved treasure hunter might be a tiny bit unhinged.
Is that a jaguar?
Maybe there's an alternate timeline where Lara slowly descends into villainy. Anyway, story-wise, it won't blow your mind, but it sets up the action well and it keeps things moving. Score, 6 out of 10. Controls. I played the Steam version using an Xbox controller, which felt natural, although the game kept giving me keyboard prompts which did get mildly annoying. Once I ignored these, it was all fairly intuitive. Platforming is straightforward, and while combat is simple, it does the job. The game leans heavily on two main mechanics, traversal and shooting. You run, jump, shimmy and grab ledges in classic Tomb Raider fashion, but the jumps feel much more forgiving than in those early games. If you're following the right path, it's kinda hard to miss your target, almost like the game nudges you in the right direction mid-air. This might take away a bit of the challenge, but it definitely keeps the pace moving. Combat is lock-on based, left trigger to aim and right trigger to shoot. You can switch targets with the right stick. It's satisfying in a very mid-2000s kind of way. It's not too demanding, but it's flashy enough to feel fun. I found myself hopping side to side like a low-budget Matrix character, firing away while somersaulting around. Not especially tactical, but it is entertaining. Overall, the controls are tight and responsive, making this one of the more accessible Tomb Raider games to jump right into. It's maybe a little too easy at times, but there's nothing broken or frustrating here. It's just good, clean adventuring. Score, 6 out of 10. Atmosphere. The atmosphere of Legend is one of its strongest assets. The combination of lush visuals, moody lighting, and ambient sound give it that adventurous, escapist feel. It captures the essence of classic Tomb Raider games while modernising it just enough to feel fresh. The opening level set against a cliffside with a crashing waterfall and sweeping views was a joy to explore. It really made me feel like I was on holiday, albeit one with a lot more gunfire. One of the things I did appreciate most was actually the minimalist HUD. Aside from tutorials and combat, the screen is mostly clear, which does pull you into the environment. It reminded me of the earlier games where you're alone in these mysterious places, and the quiet exploration becomes almost meditative. By the time I was halfway into the first tomb, I was fully immersed, and that's always a great sign in a game like this. Score, 8 out of 10. Music and sound. The soundtrack here is genuinely one of my favourites, I think. I even used to listen to it while working or studying outside of the game. The ambient tracks during exploration are subtle, relaxing, and perfectly matched to the environments. They really make you feel like you're in some exotic location, digging up forgotten secrets. The only really weak spot for me is the action music. It leans heavily into kind of generic techno and percussion, which feels a little jarring next to the more naturalistic background score. Sound effects are great across the board though. Weapon sounds have a nice punch, environmental audio has decent reverb, especially in the caves, and things like waterfalls, birdsong, and footfalls all sound natural and convincing. It's a solid effort that might not blow you away, but it certainly holds everything together nicely. Score, 7 out of 10. Graphics and style. For a game released in 2006, Tomb Raider Legends still looks surprisingly good, especially on modern hardware. The Steam version looks sharp, with smooth models and decent textures. Environments are detailed and thoughtfully designed. I was especially impressed with the water effects. The waterfalls looked fantastic, and even the static pools had a freshness to them that made me want to dive in. Character models hold up fairly well. Some of the enemy models are a little bit chunky and basic. That said, they do evoke the blocky charm of the original trilogy, which I really didn't mind. Animations are smooth for the most part, and the in-game lighting does a good job of creating a convincing world. There was even some cheeky bounce animation going on with Lara that did give me a chuckle. It's classic mid-2000s design priorities. Overall, it's visually pleasing and aged more gracefully than I had expected. Score, 8 out of 10. Gameplay. So, in my 20 minutes, I explored cliffside ruins, shot up some mercenaries, solved a puzzle involving weighted platforms, and dodged a few environmental traps. That's quite a lot to pack into a short session, and it speaks well of how much this game offers right up front. The flow between climbing, puzzling, and combat is snappy, and while it can feel a little bit linear, it never felt slow or dull. I appreciated that the game doesn't hold your hand too much. Unlike modern titles that mark the exact path with something like bright yellow paint, Legend lets you figure things out on your own. That does mean you might occasionally take a wrong turn or miss a ledge, but the satisfaction of finding your way outweighs the minor frustration. Combat, as I mentioned, isn't all that deep, but it's flashy and fun enough to break up the exploration. Puzzles are simple but satisfying, and there's a few light platforming challenges that harken back to the series' roots. Overall, I was having fun, and I absolutely want to keep playing. Score, 7 out of 10. Final verdict.
Looks like you're going forward. Yes, but how?
With patience and persistence.
So is this worth 20 minutes? Well, if you're short on time and just want to raid a tomb, shoot some bad guys and solve a puzzle or two, then Tomb Raider Legend has you covered.
That's a mechanism.
It wastes no time in delivering the series staples and does so in a polished, accessible way. It's not especially challenging, and the story is more of a backdrop than a central hook, but it still offers plenty of enjoyment. For anyone curious about the pre-reboot Tomb Raider games, but not ready to dive back into the very dated PS1 titles, this is actually the perfect entry point. You'll have a good time here, even if you don't find anything especially groundbreaking. And if you're a fan of water effects in games like I am, then you're in for a treat. Final score, 7 out of 10. So, what's your favourite Tomb Raider game of all time? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you like this review, consider giving it a like and a subscribe. I'm always posting bite-sized reviews of both retro favourites and more recent titles. Thanks for watching, and see you next time on 20 Minute Gamer.
Lara! Glad you're on your toes.
It's a useful survival skill.